Hi, this is Max. I was just going to take a minute to talk about my EDH deck with Grand Arbiter Augustin. Grand Arbiter Augustin is one of my favorite generals. I've built and rebuilt the deck many times. I feel like it's just a really good, solid, like blue-white control deck. Very strong colors for EDH, and very fun to play with. There's a couple ways you can go about building Grand Arbiter. One of the other fun parts, you can try to run things like Arcane Laboratory and Rule of Law and Winter Orb and things like that to try and really lock down everybody and build your deck around that. Or you can just, as I did, kind of build a defensive sort of control lockdown prison style, but not quite that prison style deck. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute, but I'm not going to explain what every card does, but I will go over why I picked each card. And so yes, Grand Arbiter Augustin. First off, I'll start out with the artifacts. Getting Grand Arbiter Augustin out is really helpful. Sometimes, for political reasons, you don't always want to cast it, but getting him out a turn early is always really helpful. So I run, 3 artifact ramp cards: Soul Ring, Mana Vault, and Azurius Signet. Each one of them you can play on turn 1 or 2 and have a third turn Grand Arbiter Augustin, which is, always very good. So if one of these are in your opening hand, that can be very helpful. And even if, you maybe not want to run out Grand Arbiter because, it gets a lot of hate, still quite useful to have. Mana Vault is kind of iffy, but Signets and Soul Ring I would put in pretty much any EDH deck. Another staple of any EDH deck would be Sensei's Divining Top. Stacking your deck, especially with, Future Sight, Magus of the Future type effects, really useful. Even though some people say, oh, it's only 3 cards, well, that's true, but EDH is a slow game, and sometimes getting what you need right away can be really useful. Plus, most importantly, the Sensei's Dividing Top protects itself, so that can be extremely useful. Let's see, Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves both protect your general or any creature that you want to run out. I don't use them so much for the haste as the hexproof / can't be the target of spells or abilities. The haste is useful sometimes, but mostly, in equipment that you can move around and protect your general or whatever creatures you want to have is very useful. Mind's Eye is an extremely powerful card for drawing, especially in big multiplayer games. Especially if they have something like Consecrated Sphinx out, it starts to get pretty ridiculous, and of course card advantage is critical for EDH. Mindslaver. Mindslaver is just, combined with Academy Ruins, one of the ways to win. And even if you can only play it for 1 turn, I've had it do pretty well, against opponents. Sometimes you never know what they might have. My opponent one time had a Phyrexian Processor, so I managed to kill him with the Mindslaver in 1 shot. So, Mindslaver can be very, very useful. And now for the enchantments. Luminarch Ascension. I love Luminarch Ascension. It's very aggressive, and so some people don't like that. They don't want to overdo it, but I find that it's a pretty good win condition, especially if you run it out early, like turn 2, and you can have it online and get going pretty fast. Of course, you can also make yourself a threat right off the bat, so you got to be careful with it. But it can be very good. Aura of Silence. This is just a great card. Making your opponents pay 2 more for their enchantments and artifacts really slows them down, and worst case scenario, if they're about to destroy it, you can use it to destroy an artifact or enchantment that's pesky or whatever you may need. Oblivion Ring, answer to any permanent. I really like it, non-land permanent I should say. It's really great, especially against planeswalkers, because those can be a real problem if they resolve. And I don't run Journey to Nowhere just because it's not quite as versatile as O-Ring, but O-Ring is still really good. Ghostly Prison and Propaganda both do pretty much the same thing. They're both very useful. I like to play defensively, because it's kind of a political thing. It's like you don't want to make yourself too much of a target. So if you're just putting things up like this, people will be less likely to attack you. And even if people are being aggressive towards you, it's going to slow them down and tap up their mana so you can try and attempt to do something. Stick Study, a lot of times people will just pay the extra mana, or they might forget. But if they pay the extra mana, you're still slowing them down, and combined with Grand Arbiter, you know, that's pretty strong. Having to pay 2 extra for every spell. Dissipation Field, also known as Some Mercy. It's not quite as good as Propaganda, and sometimes it is better than Propaganda. It just depends on the situation. But sometimes the comes into play effect creatures can actually do a benefit from your Dissipation Field. If they say have a Reverdian Shaman or whatever, that can hurt you, but it makes you, you know, less likely to be attacked.